Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Lion update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, the NHL, to entertainment and political props. Head to betonline.ag today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is proud to partner with Illumination Brewing for another season of crafting State IPA, the perfect tailgate and game day beer for Penn State football fans. State IPA is available now at your local beer distributor, grocery store, plus select bars and restaurants. Visit illuminationbrewing.com/beer/state-IPA to learn more. Must be 21 years or older to purchase. Please drink responsibly. Also, State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Penn State falls at home to Ohio State by a score of 20-13. Penn State now 7-1 on the season. Ohio State improves to 7-1. The number 3 Penn State Nittany Lions fall to Ohio State. The number 4 ranked Buckeyes walk into Beaver Stadium, the largest home attendance ever in Beaver Stadium history. And the adage is same old, unfortunately, coming out of this game. A lot of disappointment, but there are still some positives to take away from this. I know that probably doesn't feel like that for a lot of you that are watching and listening to this if you're a Penn State football fan, but I promise you there is some silver lining to this. But we're going to dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of Penn State versus Ohio State from this Saturday in November. Like, comment, subscribe, rate us, turn on notifications. As always, we appreciate you guys getting at us on social media at State of State Pod. Get our comment section on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all upcoming episodes of State of State plus our entire members-only playlist ad-free, commercial-free for just 99 cents a month. You hit the join button on our homepage or you follow the link in the description of this podcast. Just 99 cents a month, ad-free episodes of State of State. Justin, what is your gut reaction to this game?
Come on, son. That's my gut reaction. Come on, son. Like, I felt like we played good enough to win on defense, right? But you have to make plays at the critical moments in football. Like, that's always the key. And players make plays. I love to hear. I mean, I'm tired of hearing like, okay, the coaching does have something to do with it. I believe in coaching, all that good stuff. But when we get down to critical moments, players make plays. And that's just what we didn't accomplish at the end or put in the ball in some of our playmakers' hands. So it's pretty frustrating, stressful game to watch. But come on, son. I just feel like we that's a game that we could have capitalized and won and taken advantage of.
From what you saw from the Jimmy's and Joe's standpoint, could Penn State hang with Ohio State?
I mean, they did, right? It came down to the end. There was some different calls or things like some different calls from there. You got the touchback on our side and then the interception, you make a good play. Like, again, it comes down when you start playing top five opponents, or you're talking about being elite. Like there's a moment where players shine the special aspects that they're supposed to shine. And I don't know. I don't think we didn't do it at the critical moments. So there were some moments when we did do it. Zion Tracy comes out with the big pick six. Those are the type of moments you need to have. We had to take the ball away. We had to create possessions. When you're playing an explosive offense like Ohio State, like we know they're explosive, it can score at any moment, but we held them to 20 points. So from that standpoint, like me being just a DB and understanding that, like the defense played well enough to win. Obviously, that last one we needed to stop, and the run game didn't hold that up. But like, we have to be able to score points. The receivers have to be able to win the one-on-one matchups, create separation, and give Drew some help when that comes to the case. Like, I feel like they listened to our defensive game plan when I said what I would do. I was like, I'll put everybody up, play man outside, and just make sure they beat us. And I don't think we took advantage of the one-on-one. So like, it has to come down to the belief in the Jimmies and Joes when it comes to crunch time. Like, coaches can only make so many calls from the sidelines, and it just sucks. It just sucks.
There's lots of this to get into. I want to start with how Penn State's offense did against Ohio State's defense. We'll get to the Penn State defense against the Ohio State offense. And then we absolutely have to have a conversation now about where does this put Penn State in the greater scheme of college football with the 12-team college football playoff. It helps Penn State immensely coming out of this, but we will get to that. My gut reaction was the same thing that I started off this podcast platform saying in 2021. And I referenced what James Franklin said after the loss to Ohio State in 2018. We've gone from an average football program to a good football program to a great football program, but we're not an elite football program. You're closer to being elite. However, you still see, one, the things that need to be accomplished in terms of recruiting and the personnel Penn State needs to have to get over the hump in these games. You also, two, saw some things that were uncharacteristic of Kotelnicki and Allen as play callers on offense and defense so far this year, and that it just didn't feel the same. Three, from a mental and an emotional side, Justin, it felt like Penn State lacked the confidence that we've seen them have up until this point in the year. And that the USC game, you and I talked about it. Nobody blinked. Nobody was demoralized. None of that stuff. Same thing against Wisconsin. And granted, like your starting quarterback goes out, and I never really felt like that game was out of reach for Penn State. Like, oh my God, they're in danger of losing this. But you saw mental fortitude. It's not that I saw a demoralized Penn State football team, but I saw a nervous Penn State football team against Ohio State. And sometimes it's the logo. Sometimes it's seeing the athletes on the other side of the field. You disagree?
I mean, you're probably right. I mean, I think, booty holes got a little tight when when it gets down to the like having things on the line, right? Or I don't know if it's a mental block with Ohio State, but like they were playing with them. So even if they were playing a little tight, because I think Ohio State was showing a lot of respect as well. Like we limited the explosive plays and maybe we weren't as aggressive in different moments down the field. And a lot of times that's negated by having different levels of personnel. Like the receivers couldn't get open. Like at the end of the day, like every time they looked at the wide view, and it's just like there's no separation. So like Drew has nowhere to throw. He's taking sacks. Because it comes down when you get to the nitty gritty in those top 5 teams, and it comes down to Jimmys and Joes making special plays. And I think at moments we did, and at moments we didn't. Did they call the game as loose as they had in the previous? In the past? Mm-hmm. No, they haven't. They didn't.
Tight as a drum. But not in a good way.
100%. And when that does happen, it's like there is a level of it, right? You're playing someone that, like when you have talent, that does limit how you call things because you can make really big mistakes. Like, I mean, whether it's pick sixes or different things of that nature, especially in closing out the first half and the guy has an interception where that's points off the board. Like those different type of momentum swings completely change how you're calling a game. I mean, they're coming out at trips at the beginning of the game. I'm talking in a group message, and it's like, oh, we got to make an adjustment. And I'm like, oh, we got to see what happens at halftime. And I felt like the defense did make a good adjustment at halftime. But at the beginning, they ran their man different concepts, like switched it up a little bit with zone. Zion Tracy makes the interception. But we got to remember, Chip Kelly's a good offensive coordinator. He understands, like, okay, how can we expose different weaknesses and put stress on it? Not even from the standpoint of dominating or doing that, but like just get them on their heels a little bit so we can get edges and have cross routes. They weren't doing anything special, but then we got guys running into each other as receivers. And I mean, at this point, it seems like you just need to throw Tyler Warren the ball 40 times a game because I don't know. It just doesn't seem like when it comes to just playmaking ability and players make plays, that's a philosophy that I believe in true-heartedly. Yes, coaching does matter. Don't get me wrong. You got to put them in position, but like players make plays. And at the end of the day, our players did not make the plays that they needed to make at the end of the day. And it sucks, man, because like you hold Ohio State to 20 points. We had a chance to win and we let it slip away.
The challenge,
even playing tight, even without opening the playbook and doing the different things of that nature. So like I'm not necessarily sure where that breakdown is, but now it seems like more of a mental hurdle than a physical one.
The challenge you and I deal with on this show is I think you and I are level-headed enough to look at everything James Franklin's staff has had to do since 2013, 2014 to get us to where we are now in terms of what the program is, what the program can be. We understand the number of things that have had to have taken place off the field just to try and improve the on-field product. And you worked for the man at one point and you have a relationship with the team. So we always are very, I feel like we're understanding. It's the best way I can put it on this show. But it does continue to beg the question. This is now 1-10 against Ohio State. The record against top 5 teams under James Franklin is atrocious. And again, I said it at the top of the show, same old, same old. It felt closer than it has in the last 2 years. It felt like the gap was less. I still look at the greater pantheon of college football, and we'll get to that later on in terms of Penn State's spot in the playoff. But I felt like, okay, ground has been made up, but there's still a gap. And it just continues to beg the question of what is it going to take to close the gap? And is James Franklin the person to get Penn State over the hump? Because this is extremely frustrating at this point. It's been frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I like you're 100% right. The numbers are the numbers. 1-10 is atrocious when it comes to that. I mean, Ryan Day didn't have the greatest records when you talk about them against Michigan. Across the board, right? But when we think about those critical moments and players that make plays or separate things in college football, you're talking about receivers, big play moments in the backfield, and a big time quarterback. When it comes to that, like I think we just have been lacking that production from those positions. Whether it's the offensive coordinator calling the wrong plays, whether it's just the production of the players being out there or whatever it may be, but no shot at for just the receiving. Tyler Warren.
I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, 100%, right?
And Tyler Warren and Nick Singleton, nobody made a difference in terms of offensive threats.
And there was moments to be taken, right? There were times that we could have capitalized, especially at the end of the game, coming down on 4th and goal. And we get a little cute and toss the ball. And I would rather a quarterback draw with Tyler Warren and just kind of leave it at that. You know what I mean? So I think that kind of goes away from the identity that we've been building throughout the season. Like, hey, we're going to come right at you and like stop us if you stop us. But like the boot, throwing in to trouble. And it's just like, not here, not right now. You know what I mean? So like, I do believe James is the coach that can get us over the hump, but I think there has to be philosophical changes in how we approach certain positions in terms of talent acquisition and like what we think is good enough and what is good enough to win 10 games or 11 games versus what's good enough to win a national championship. I think that frame of winning 11 games and winning a national championship is a lot.
It's a huge difference.
Bigger. It's a large difference versus winning 11 games and being a very, a top 10 team. Like that feels good. That's great. But when we talk about, the elite teams, we just go back in terms of the national champions, like there were dudes making plays. Like it's not necessarily just the crazy schematics and time management and this great coaching. No, there's like attitude, there's identity, and players make plays one-on-one. Like at the end of the day, like, okay, we got to have that. We can't have if we're going to have a pass at the end of the first half, it has to be a incomplete. It cannot be an interception, right? Or it has to be a touchdown. That's what you would most likely want from your one-on-one guy, from your receiver. I mean, we're throwing, deep balls to no disrespect to Clifford, but we're throwing deep balls, to Clifford's a 5'9", 5'10" receiver against, like these are primetime DBs from Ohio State. Regardless of this is not probably one of their least talented teams that I've seen in the past 8 to 10 years. And like, you still can't just from the baseline of their talent, got a 6'2" corner that's running and jumping stuff. Like that's not the shot to take. Or it's like organized chaos to an extent. And it can work when we're playing different teams. And we saw it, and it's something we brought up against Southern California. It's like, all right, the one thing that does scare me is that it's our tight end that had 244 yards. And he was the one that kind of carries because he's a dude, right? Like you put the ball in his hands, you see things happen. He is a dude. You need more dudes like that just to kind of help make the simple plays special. Because like in the special moments, like you need special players to step up and make plays. And that's just what it is.
Let's get to Penn State's offense and really go through this as best we can. Drew Aller finishes the game 12 of 20, 146 yards through the air, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 60% completion percentage. And then on the ground, Drew Aller had to be very active in this game, 10 carries for 31 yards. Overall, Penn State had 32 rushing attempts for 120 yards, so averaging 3.8 yards per carry. Receiving, it was the Nick Singleton and Tyler Warren show. Nick Singleton 6 for 54, long of 19. Tyler Warren 4 for 47, a long of 31. He had that one-on-one jump ball situation, which honestly, you talk about the skill of the Ohio State players. The guy that was on him, I forget who it was on him like glue. Like that was a true 50-50 ball, and Warren was
all over the field. I don't think there was separation. I don't think there was separation at all, right? Like when Tyler made the play, he makes the play. Like, all right, catch the ball even with someone on you. Like contested catches comes with the territory, man. We're getting into this era of paying players. The patience is coming down.
Yeah. Harrison Wallace, 2 catches for 45 yards on 4 targets, at least according to stats.statbroadcast.com. And Julian Fleming, 1 catch for 4 yards. That is 4 Penn State players who caught passes. I could understand going into this game that, okay, who are your primary targets within this offense? Nick Singleton and Tyler Warren. That makes sense. Well, Nick Singleton, along with the rest of the rushing attempt, not completely, but like 3.8 yards per carry is not what Penn State is looking for. And credit to Ohio State. They were able to shut that down. Katron Allen, 12 carries for 27 yards, 2.3 a carry. Nick Singleton, 6 for 15, 2.5 yards per carry. I can understand people being like, should have handed the ball off to Nick. Well, you get Nick involved in the passing game. You try to get him in space. That's not necessarily Katron's game. So I understand the game plan, and both guys wind up with 12 touches. So it's not good either way, but I struggle to look at this and pin something on one in particular person. I think people might naturally look at the quarterback, and I'm like, Drew was running for his life quite a bit in this game. I will say this, the Drew Aller we saw last year in this game and other big games, that completion percentage drops by about 10 to 15% in 2023 Drew Aller. 2024 Drew Aller was mobile enough, granted came in dealing with an injury from the Wisconsin game, but he did things to try and keep things moving for Penn State as best he could. Got sacked 3 times. Penn State lost the penalty battle, as we always talk about. That's been an issue for the entire season. Penn State's offensive line, I don't know what to say about it. I wouldn't necessarily say that it was a bad performance. I just wouldn't say it was a good performance. It was just, you got hurt by that pass rush, and credit to Jim Knowles and that defense. They were not phased, Justin, by anything Andy Kotelnicki threw out there.
Listen, they weren't phased. I wouldn't be phased either. If you're not afraid of the deep ball, if you don't have to worry about one-touch guys on the outside perimeter, it is much easier to scheme up a defense. I can do it right now, jumping in and just looking at it. If you don't have any threats on the outside that I have to keep my safeties back, or I have to do any type of discuss, if I can just man up on the outside and I have enough, just from a physics standpoint, guys in the front 7 that can take up gaps, play football, and punch them in the mouth that they believe that they're better than, that's not a hard thing to do. And that limits the offensive coordinator. So I keep going back to the receivers, not to just harp on that group, but like they are the ones that create spacing. It's like 3-point shooters in the NBA. If you don't have a 3-point shooter, it's like, all right, stay out there and we'll just protect the paint. Like it's the exact same thing when it comes down to the run game in football. And then, so like, no, that's what we've been seeing, just the hiccups in the run game the past couple weeks, where it's like, yo, guys are teeing off. They're in trigger mode. Like I remember playing against teams when we didn't have a threat of getting beat deep, and we're just playing man and letting guys like Tamba or Jared Aldrick or just Aaron Maben, guys just kind of peel off and go get the quarterback. It makes the game a lot easier. So I can't even put all that in there. We have to have more spacing in the sense of explosive fear. We have to put explosive fear into defenses. That's the only way that you get them on their heels. That's the only way that you can get edges. That's the only way to attack them. And I hate to say it, but it comes down to that like talent acquisition aspect of those guys. Like those guys, they're different guys, right? Like I don't, regardless of what it is, it might, they might not pass the evaluation in the sense of like, hey, no, I don't know exactly I know exactly what it is, but I'm just saying, whatever our line is, that this is a good enough stable on the outside, that needs to change, because when we play these top teams, and I'm saying top teams, I'm talking top 6, 7 teams in the country, you have to have playmakers, and playmakers that believe that they're better than those guys that they're playing. Like, I don't know if our outside guys were playing against, like we're going into the game, like I'm about to dog this receipt. I'm about to dog this guy. Like Ohio State DBs, like I can tell like the sense of those guys. Like I could tell Penn State DBs, lockdown you, they weren't afraid of, they came up to, they rose to the challenge of playing against the Jeremiah Smith and Uboka, I forget his name, but like even the touchdown that he had, like that was like a second through the zone. That's a good matchup by Chip Kelly, putting him on an outside linebacker to have a touchdown. So like kudos, but like no one else on the team seemed like they were afraid of playing against, even up front with the defensive tackles. I think they penetrated well, played decent, even though the numbers looked like it at the end of the game. They kept them and contained to an extent. But like when it looked at the secondary, I looked at Ohio State secondary, that was the most confident group when they were going against the Penn State receivers. So like that, I don't care what you draw up. When you got DBs that believe they can lock stuff down one-on-one, it's going to be a long day, like period. That's where, that's where that piece comes in.
Well, we knew that was going to be a mismatch coming into this game. To defend the offensive line, even a touch, when you have those coverage pressures or coverage sacks, it's not that they're not doing their job. It's just you have 2 All-American defensive ends in Sawyer and Tui Maloau. Those guys were eventually going to get home, and they did. And when the secondary locks down a bunch of guys that they're not that concerned about, it's pretty easy. And as I love what Tyler Warren's game is. I love how diverse he is in his skill set, but he is not a alpha wide receiver that changes everything in space. Nick Singleton, I think, as much as we look at him as a playmaker for this offense, he still has elements of his game that have to be added for him to be truly a threat the second he touches the ball. Because I didn't get that feeling from Ohio State today, their defense, that is.
Well, I would say that, like, again, with Nick Singleton, I think he is who he thought he was, right? Like when he gets in the open space and he can make guys miss, he doesn't engage defenders until 5-6 yards down the field. He has home run ability. It's hard to make tackles in the open field. But from a creation standpoint, like just a pure dynamic playmaker, he's not necessarily that. Like when we came up watching, Saquon Barkley's and the Journey Browns, the Miles Sanders, guys that can kind of create from nothing. I don't think he's that. He's a good running back, and I don't think it's fair to judge him on being something that he's not. Like that's, what I'm saying? And even from a Katron Allen, he's a running back that is a good complementary back to like a home run type of threat where you can kind of pound it out and do different things of that nature. Is he going to create enough offense from the run game that changes everything else? Probably not, but he's a very good running back. So sometimes, like, even those evaluations I feel like are unfair to the players, because hell, like that's just not what they are. And like when they have shown to have those different pieces put in place, we have a lot of complementary pieces, like pieces that, hey, he needs this, the receivers need this to work, we need to go again, like things need to work, we need to find those different those holes and exploit it. I don't know if we have too many guys where it's just like, yo, that dude versus that dude, I'm taking my dude 100 out of 100 times. That's what I'm referring to when we got, like, when we're moving forward in just the talent acquisition. Like that's what it has to be. Because I mean, there's only so many plays you can call. And at the end of the day, everything is scripted for a touchdown. And you have to be able to beat your man. And that's what I didn't see, because I think Ohio State challenged the guys from Penn State on the perimeter, and they won. Like they did a great job with it. And then I think that tightens up the play calling. When you don't believe that your guys can beat people one-on-one, yeah, you're not going to go into your bag of tricks. Like you're on your heels, because you're only calling plays from the standpoint of like, what are your players producing? So like, maybe I'm just too much of a personnel guy, but like that's exactly like that's how I see it. And I'm giving Andy Kotelnicki a lot of credit moving forward, and being able to use the personnel to the best benefit of Penn State and attacking weaknesses and emphasizing our strengths on offense. And I just think today it came to the point where it doesn't really matter what you call. Like if player A is better than player B, I mean, just try to give it to your best player at that point. But the hell, like, I don't know.
No, there is no alpha wide receiver right now. And as much as I know we sing the praises of Singleton and Allen on this show, you could see the gap between a Quinshon Judkins, who, in my opinion, is one of the best running backs in the country, maybe the best outside of Genty. That is, it's that's what an alpha looks like at that position. And credit to Ohio State's defense. They decided we're going to take away the run game of Penn State and we're going to put it all in the passing game. And it wasn't so much, again, I don't look at this as, oh, Drew Aller did anything necessarily wrong in this game. Yes, the interception, but it gets tipped. So it's, I don't know how much you can put on him. Justin, there will inevitably be people who are going to play Monday morning quarterback and be like, why wasn't Bo Perbula in there more? I'm of the opinion, I don't think Bo would have made much of a difference in this game.
Not at all. Like if you're not afraid of the pass game, like a running quarterback actually unleashes it, probably go zero blitz. Like like they would probably been even
right. It would have played right into their hands.
It would have played right into their hands. You look at this stat, my friend Smoke, shout out to Smoke over at 247 CBS, but like Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles is the first time a DC has stopped or held Andy Kotelnicki's offense to 0 touchdowns since 2021. So again, like I don't know if that's a case of having a different level of personnel that Andy has seen to this point and being able to call different plays. But again, your plays still come from your players. And so when you have just matchup discrepancies on the outside, I mean, it's tough, because I say that to say the defensive backs, like they didn't look scared. They didn't look scared against this high-powered receiver group, right? Like they were competing, they were making plays. Even when Ohio State made plays, we understand that, those guys get paid a lot of money, literally, and they're on scholarship as well, and they're going to make plays. But the fact that nobody stumbled, nobody was shivering in their boots, like they were challenging those guys each time. You got the pick six and all those different things in there. I mean, we held them to 20 points. So like, maybe it's the DB in me that's like with how hard that is to do, and to not come out with a W, and to have the offense, kind of putter a little bit after being so efficient throughout the season. Is like, yo, we were counting on you, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're just, especially on the 1 yard line, right?
You saw balance the entire season for the most part up until this point. And there was the stat said on the air that in the last 8 quarters of play between Penn State and Ohio State, Penn State has not scored a touchdown. And if it weren't for the pick six, this game feels very, very different.
I mean, shout out to Coach Allen and the defensive coaches, Coach Smith, Coach Poindexter. I mean, all the guys Coach Dion, because it seems like that personnel, when I'm making these personnel statements, it seems like they're on the track to win and play against high level receivers and offensive players. Again, best offensive players are going to make plays. Like you talked about Quinshon Judkins. Like, yo, he's a dynamic player. We saw him in the bowl game last year, right? Like in those guys, and that's why there's a premium on those one-touch guys when you're coming through, regardless if a guy can do the right assignment, make the right reads. Sometimes special guys are just special, and we need to understand that and need to just start collecting more special guys. I mean, $20 million cap is coming in, so we just got to spend money wisely on players and win share, and understand that is a critical piece of this whole football game. It's genetics, and in traits, and we need to understand which traits actually shine through in close games if we're trying to win a national championship.
This episode of State of State is presented in part by Melon. Now, for those of you who've been watching this podcast for quite some time, you know that Justin and I are both big hat guys. Now, when I was introduced to Melon, I immediately saw how durable and comfortable their hats are. Great color options, great sizing options as well. For me, someone who likes to go to a lot of different football games and tailgates throughout the year, I need a hat that's going to be flexible depending on the weather. If it's hot out, I want something that's breathable, and that's something that Melon hats provide. And also, if it's inclement weather that's going to be nasty out, then I need a hat that's not going to lose its shape if you get them wet. In fact, if you need to wash a Melon hat, they come right back to life and they look brand new if you throw them in the wash. So that's something I absolutely love. So if you're looking for a hat as tough as you, check out Melon. You won't wear anything else after you get one for yourself. If you're looking for the world's most durable hat, look no further. Go to melon.com. That's MELIN.com and put it to the test yourself. This podcast is brought to you in part by Cherry Bundy. Cherry Bundy is a recovery product that's in the locker room for the Penn State Nittany Lions football program, and we are so proud to have them as a sponsor to get the message out there to help you with your fitness, your performance, and your recovery. Tart cherries are the highest antioxidant fruit or vegetable in the world. They're a natural anti-inflammatory with incredible benefits such as reduced soreness, increased recovery, contains naturally occurring melatonin to help improve your sleep and also help support your immunity. Cherry Bundy is used by nearly 500 collegiate and professional sports teams, including Penn State. That's 66 out of 67 Power 4 conference football teams, plus every NCAA football and basketball national champion since 2007. Goes deeper than that. In the National Football League, 10 of the last 11 Super Bowl champions have used Cherry Bundy. Every team playing in Europe or Brazil this season had Cherry Bundy with them. You can check out Cherry Bundy right now at cherrybundy.com or Amazon. There was a lot of discussion on social media about, people missing Manny Diaz and Tom Allen. While so far this season, this was the odd thing for me, is that so far this season, Penn State suffocates their opponent in the second half. The second half adjustments, especially in the third quarter, Tom Allen's defense had done well. But there's this undercurrent of Penn State fans who I think are seeing a significant drop off from what Manny Diaz was able to get out of the defense to what Tom Allen has gotten out of the defense so far. What's your observation?
It's style, right? I think like Manny Diaz's style of defense was a little bit more exciting, more splash plays, but I think we gave up more explosives again when Manny Diaz was the defense coordinator. I have to go to the stats about that, but Tom doesn't give up. We don't give up many explosive plays, and then we take advantage of the ones that we do get a chance to have. You see Abdul Carter with the two late sacks. He should have had one on that 4th and 1 where we could have got off the field there, which was, a terrible unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that kind of kept the drive going from those standpoints. But I think he's been doing a great job on the defense. I mean, again, hold an explosive team to 20 points, man. Like 16 for 24, 182 from the quarterback, 2 TDs, an interception that we turned into points. Obviously, the running game, 40 touches for 176 yards, 4.4 yards a carry as a total team. That's good defensive football, man. I don't know what else to say. I mean, whether it's just like a style that people can kind of catch when you talk about those explosives on defense, having more turnovers, sacks, exotic blitzes, and how it looks moving around. But no, I think the defense has been playing to the level that a defense needs to play and good enough to win.
The defense, I was very disappointed because there was so much talked about in the lead up to this game of the injuries that Ohio State had along their offensive line. And it was really well outlined by Urban Meyer in the days leading up to this of, hey, they're bumping their center to guard, and their center is now playing, or last year's center, I guess, is now playing. I might have that incorrect in terms of the exact position, but the left tackle was playing left tackle for the first time in his life. This was a patchwork offensive line, and they beat Penn State's defensive line. So
yes, Yes. So that's funny you say that because, like, again, we get back into that talent acquisition phase and we talk about the first thing being the physics of a player, the physics, whether they're big enough, fast enough, all those different things, all that position moving around shit doesn't really matter. If a guy's big enough, strong enough, fast enough, and believes he can kick your ass, if he believes that, I don't really care if he's at left tackle, right tackle, all those different things do not matter if I just have the physics advantage on my side, the God physics on my side, right? And I think that's what we saw. And even in the moments when we had the advantage, where Abdul Carter was sprinting off the edge, making him seem like he was stuck in quicksand. Like those are the moments that we were able to take advantage of. We should have had 3 sacks, but like even in those moments, I mean, again, that's just a matter of collecting big people and the right type of big people to do those different type of things. So I understand the patchwork and all that, but I think that's a little overhyped in the sense of like they're not putting undersized, incapable linemen out there to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like
Inexperienced, sure, but yeah.
Experience is so much, but that's where the coaching comes in. So like what positions are you put them in to where their experience is being shown or not shown, right? Like we've seen it. I think we've seen it this year with the quarterback. Just a matter of how we coordinate and put him in different positions. He looks a lot better than he did last year when we put like maybe too much on his play and didn't have the support from the outside receiver. So I think when it comes down to those different type of things, there's like the physics aspect, there's the special aspects and traits that you're looking for in design, and that goes into your philosophy. And I think we've shown that we had an identity on offense, and maybe the whole thing of like, yo, how do we attack this team versus just sticking to our pure identity maybe came out today when you're like looking at like, yo, there's not really any holes, and that like closes up the playbook a little bit. Like, I mean, that just goes based off of what they said in the press conference about identity, because like today, the identity this was like the first time all season where the identity kind of seemed like a seesaw. Like, all right, are we going to run the ball? Are we going to tackle
That
in the
seemed like
air?
both sides of the ball for Penn State. Like the identity we've seen so far this year, I like you said, tight booty holes. I don't know what to call it, but this didn't look like the Penn State I've seen thus far.
Yeah, because that's what we call it in the football building. He's like everybody walking around on eggshells. But when we talk about the defense, again, like Penn State, not Penn State, but Ohio State spent $20 million on this roster, right? So when I'm looking at the Penn State defense, I have a lot more grace in the sense of like understanding what great players do. And the fact that they scored what? 2 touchdowns? 1 touchdown. No.
2 touchdowns,
2 touchdowns
from Howard through the air. Yeah.
So 2 touchdowns. And what was the other one?
Igbuka and Innis caught touchdown passes.
Right, both on linebacker. So like we talk about like those type of things. Those are schemed up situations from like shout out to Chip Kelly on those type of things. Understanding at the beginning they came out and had a good game plan. Pick 6, boom, right off the bat. We have a jump. We're jumping on the way we need to do, creating possession. Shout out to Zion Tracy because that's a hell of a play. And yeah, I just don't have the same feeling about the defense as I do the offense because like I feel like the defense when you play explosive players, they're going to make explosive plays. It's a matter of you like coming up to the challenge and continue to compete the whole way. And I think they did that. I don't feel like the offense can like remotely competed the same way that the defense did, even though it was still close, right? It just seemed like
defense kept you in the game. Defense kept you in the game.
That's what it is, man. And like call it what we want to call it, but I didn't see our typical offensive identity of like that attack and attacking weaknesses. Maybe Ohio State didn't see any personnel weaknesses from Ohio State that we mentioned earlier. Like I looked at that defensive backfield and they looked extremely confident. Maybe I'm getting pissed because they were doing our strappy boy wave and stuff like that. But but
it's okay.
But you have to be confident to do that. Like I understand when DB is getting their bag, it's not a good place to be for the whole defense. That opens up for someone like for the defensive coordinator to send blitzes, to like let guys just run. If like, yo, we got this on the back end, you guys go eat. It's a front seven's dream. And when you create those scenarios, like Ohio State was in a good phrase to the point where it affects the play calling. Not an excuse, but like that's what happens. It starts from like, yo, I'm not going to say dog fighting, but if you got a dog that you're like afraid that's going to get his head bit off, like you're going to try to protect them a little bit. Like that's how coaching operates when you're dealing with like the personnel. So like I'm getting back to it because I was just getting very frustrated at I don't know if there's a play call to beat certain situations. The last play at the 4th and goal. I mean, we can have a discussion about that. Run the ball against Tyler Warren, do whatever we want to do. Like that's minute shit to me. But everything else, I mean, you have to open it up to be able to hit seams and get in open space. And I just feel, we did not do that.
There's a lot to unpack from this game. Staying with the Penn State defense, Will Howard gets 16 of 24 through the air, 182 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, the pick that we talked about, 67% completion percentage. He contributes on the ground with 12 carries for 24 yards. Ohio State averages 4.4 yards on the ground, which you talked about before. Receiving, Jeremiah Smith, 4 for 55. Igbuka, 3 for 31 and a touchdown. Ennis, 2 for 33 and a touchdown. Tate, 2 for 55. I mean, it just went on, and it was just timely plays that Ohio State was very, very different than they were against Nebraska. They were 6 of 12 on third down. They were 1 of 10 on third down last week. Not as many penalties, 2 for 15. Penn State of 5 for 45, 358 total yards. They upped that by about 100 yards from last week. So this was supposed to be the Penn State defense that would have upped the ante from what Nebraska was able to do last week in Columbus. So looking at it, I was disappointed by the interior of Penn State's defensive line, and we have sung their praises all season long, Justin, of, man, they've bulked up. They look like they're doing very well in terms of stopping the run. You have great pass rushers. Dennis Sutton was not involved in this game because of the injury this past weekend at Wisconsin. You're missing some pieces. We talked about it in the preview episode. Love to have KJ Winston for this, but that's not the case at this point in the season. So it's just looking at the secondary and the back end of this defense. They were confused a lot. And credit to Chip Kelly again, like you said, they schemed people open. Penn State took away the explosive play for the most part, but defensively, it's crazy. The defense is the reason that this was 20-13. Again, you take away that pick six, this is 20-6. If not, it's 27-6. And you're looking at this game very, very differently. So now to take a step back and think about, well, what does this mean for Penn State in the top 10, the top 12 of college football? Because we're all thinking, man, if you beat Ohio State, you could be a shoo-in now for the college football playoff. Now it's kind of a question because the narrative is going to continue. James Franklin can't win the big game. Penn State can't win the big game. Penn State didn't play anybody this season. They've beaten Illinois, and they didn't beat Ohio State. The positive for this, Justin, for me, is that you at least played Ohio State close. The eye test, however, is not going to kill you. I don't expect Penn State to fall too much in the rankings, but the eye test for me, say it again.
So they may drop to 6 or 7. I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with that. But the eye test for me, I know Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas. I would throw Alabama in there. And I know they've dropped a bunch, but regardless of ratings, just in terms of teams that are out there that can do some damage, and Tennessee are all better than Penn State. And it's not leaps and bounds. It's close, but it's not enough that I sit here and I'm like, yeah, Penn State has a legitimate shot at the national championship. Penn State is a legitimate shot still to make it in to the 12-team college football playoff, but you have to win out the rest of the way. It's not too bad of a schedule, but you have to win out the rest of the way. How do you feel about this team with looking at the rest of college football?
Yeah, you got to put your big boy pants on and, like you said, win out. I mean, you got a night game next week. I know a lot of energy. It was a big hoopla. It was like the biggest, largest attendance in Beaver Stadium history, which is like a big deal. But we got a whiteout next week, right? And UW is not going to come in rolling over for any type of, pity party. So we got to get ready to play next week in prime time, a high emotional game as well, and win out the rest of the season and let the chips fall where you may. When we had a chance to win today and we did not pull that off. So, I mean, that's a part of high level sports that you have to love. There's a level of accountability and transparency. We see everyone saw your mistakes. Everyone sees exactly what you are, regardless of the record. Like you said, like just from the eye test, like you can see, like, oh, even if the team lost 2 times, I think they have the personnel to beat this team. And we can't get into that. We just got to make sure we win out and get into the playoffs and see if we can roll the dice in there.
And also, I didn't mention credit to the Miami Hurricanes. What Cam Ward is capable of, that does make Miami a player here as we get closer and closer to the playoff. Overall, how far off do you think Penn State is reasonably, in terms of maybe it's years, looking at how many years away is Penn State from reasonably getting in the conversation for the national championship?
I mean, years. I think it's position groups, man. Like at the end of the day, I don't even know if it's years. It's a matter of.
I mean, it's recruiting cycles.
Yeah, so I guess you say two. I mean, two, and then anyone can pop, right? Like they all come together and things like operate. They have the infrastructure to be a national championship team, and I think that's what's the most frustrating when you look across, because it's like those little levers that aren't being pulled or not up to the level of explosiveness of some of those top end teams that we're speaking about. Like just having to meticulously drive the ball and do those things on offense versus just having a quick strike offense, more down the field approach. I think those are the things that kind of hold us back at this moment. Like we've historically played great defense forever, right? Like not to date it, but like 20 years ago, right? We talk about like when they had
40
bad
years
seasons.
ago.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like the defense has always kind of been it. And like the ups and downs have been offense. That's the one thing that like when we had success when I was there, like we had dynamic, explosive offenses where we were averaging 38, 40 points a game. And with different coordinators, right? So like when you have those different type of things, like I think that's what you have to get to win a national championship in this day and age. And again, not using our teams as examples because we didn't win a national championship, but like we see what is actually winning, the ability to be explosive, the ability to just have matchup favorites across the field. Like, and that is that. I don't know if that's a philosophical approach to different talent acquisition pieces on different positions, or it's a matter of like paying the right people, right? And understanding like what is the value and the win share that certain players bring to the team, and make sure that you're ruthlessly sticking to those. And that's what we have to kind of look in the mirror for.
When you talk about paying the right people, it's been publicized recently. I believe Penn State's NIL budget for football is about $13 million. And we've heard so many numbers thrown out there about Ohio State, call it in the neighborhood of 20. And that's only just recently I saw comments from Pat Kraft saying it's like, oh, now we're like keeping pace, and it's still you're a couple years away. We've seen some really big gifts given to the Penn State football program within the last year that have helped kind of play catch up. But if you're to capitalize on the tenure of Drew Aller, for instance, at quarterback, you got some work to do. And Drew Aller still has some progression to make. I see so much more of what he's capable of as a player. I know everybody talks about, oh, he could go out into the NFL draft in 2025. I'm like, man, I really hope he stays in the 26 until the 26th draft, that is, because I think he still has so much to add to his game. And it's not that he is a bad football player by any means. He has so much ability, and I hope he gives himself that time. And you talk about the NIL space. All right, Penn State still has some ground to catch up there. It's just this game is just demoralizing, and it's frustrating. And I think as a fan of this team since I was, single digits, it's like, man, there is a culture on and off the field, within the program and outside the field, of we're aiming up for all the Ohio States and the Michigans of the world. Michigan's down this year, so you're only aiming up at Ohio State. And you only play Ohio State this year. And that culture clearly permeates onto the field. And that culture has to be fixed, because if you go onto the field thinking we're aiming up at these guys, you will not take them down. When you look at other great programs, they may not be looking down at you, but they're looking at other programs as this is just a game. And we're not there yet.
That's a valid point, and I will say $20 million and $13 million is a big difference when you're talking talent acquisition. Like that's not close. I like Pat as an AD, but I think that was a little bit of a little propaganda to get guys involved, right? Like, hey, more people are giving, so it's a fundraising trick. Hey, people are giving, we're doing much better, so it makes people want to get, because that's what you want to get caught into. Like, oh well, let's look what we did with 13 million, and like that's still a $7 million gap is huge when you're just talking about external collective personal interest money. Like that's a huge difference when you're talking about these players that we seem to be referring to in terms of the talent acquisition pool. See how this all happens with the like different the house settlement and all that stuff that moves forward. But
if the number is actually 13, and say Penn State finishes this 11-1, and you're a first-round player in the 12-team college football playoff, you host a game, you got a better chance. But still, say it's a first-round exit. $13 million for 11-1 and a first-round exit.
I mean, it depends on what the other 11 teams are. Because, like, I mean, I think on that list that was out. I mean, I think we were around 11 or 12. Like, we weren't on that first page. It was Texas A&M, LSU, all the teams that Oregon, all the teams that you named. Like, so when you think of that, like when we get into that top 10, man, it's a Jimmy's and Joe's game. The coaches can keep us there. The coaches set a floor, critical moments in the games, time management, critical decisions, beautiful. But when it comes down to it, man, as a former player, it's me and you, man. And you have to have guys that, like you said, aren't looking up at Ohio State. They got to be looking slightly down, like almost discrediting them a little bit. Like that's, and I don't know what those players cost. Well, I do know what those players cost, but
that's what I felt. I felt that feeling, that swagger when you and D Will were doing your thing. That was some energy. And it's like, I don't know who those guys are within the current program or guys that are being recruited, but you need those dudes in there to be like, hey, I understand when you walk in here, it's like, man, we've been trying to take these guys down for the longest time. We haven't done it. How could that not get into the psyche of a kid who's just arriving on campus? Because that's the truth. That's what history tells you. You need that person that walks in there and upsets the apple cart and acts like a Travis Hunter, acts like a Shadur Sanders. Not saying they're perfect by any means in terms of a program. Not at all. But
they believe they're the best players when they step on the field.
Bingo. And that's what you believe. That's what Derek Williams believed. That's what Michael Robinson believed. That's what a lot of players that have come through this program have believed. But right now, I don't see that many guys on this team right now that are like, we can beat anybody in the country right now. And I'm probably wrong. There's probably plenty of guys that feel that way. But in terms of exuding that to the entirety of the fan base and the program, I don't see it.
I think you see it in some spots, just not entirely across the board.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think
it's got to be all in.
I think you see it sometimes. I think Abdul thinks he's like the best, one of the best. Like the linebackers think they are. I think the secondary players think they're the best. I think some of the defensive linemen think they're the best, right? Like whether they talk it or don't say it, I'd rather them not say it. But you know, I believe so. I mean, yeah,
it's got to be everybody.
It has to be everybody. I know everyone loves the humility of a team, and that's like the Penn State culture. But like you're right, that humility is only good when you're kind of working on. It gets into the competitive gladiator field. I mean, you have to have that.
Thank you all so much for tuning in for this. I know this was a challenging day for a lot of Penn State fans, a lot of excitement, a lot of hype around this game, and it's just it's deflating is what it is. Like, comment, subscribe, rate us, turn on notifications, get at us on social media at State of State Pod, and get in our comment section on YouTube. I know there's going to be a lot of opinions about this game, and if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get ad-free shows, commercial-free shows. You know how there's about 1 million political ads every 10 seconds right now? You don't have to deal with any of that. Just hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast, and you can get our entire members-only playlist, plus all upcoming episodes of State of State ad-free. Thank you all so much for joining us. Penn State, number 3, falls at home to number 4 Ohio State by a score of 20-13. Up next week, the official Penn State whiteout game against the Washington Huskies. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Also, let us know what you think of the show on social media and check out all of our content on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Search for the handle at State of State Pod. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.